History has shown again and again that during crises of confidence in governments, people rely on stores of value that keep their value over long periods of time, like gold, silver, or land. One of the ways that archaeologists know a society was facing conflict and war at a certain period in time is the larger number of coin hoards buried in the ground during that period. Which brings us to the problems with physical commodities. They're very difficult to store because they are heavy, they take up a lot of space, and even more difficult to move, especially across borders. If you're a politically persecuted minority, for example, and you bury your life's wealth in your backyard, but then you have to flee the country to save your life, the chances you will ever see that wealth again are slim to none. But even if you somehow are able to retrieve some of it and take it with you, it can easily be found and confiscated. Try crossing a border today with $10,000 worth of gold, and you will see what I mean. Physical commodities are also hard to verify. If someone hands you a gold coin and says it's 97% pure, how do you verify that if you're not a jeweler with the right experience and equipment? Bitcoin was developed to solve these problems. Cost of verification is done by the ledger, which only admits transactions with real Bitcoin. If you're transacting on the Bitcoin ledger, you know that Bitcoin is real and not fake. It's also easy to move Bitcoin anywhere, peer-to-peer, either by sending it electronically, by taking a tiny hard drive with you, or by memorizing your seed phrase and regenerating it on a new hardware wallet when you are in a safe place. None of this requires any third parties, any banks or financial institutions. The true promise of Bitcoin is therefore self-custody, that you store your Bitcoin yourself on special hardware and you transact with it yourself using that hardware. I'm well aware that this process is still a pain in the ass for most ordinary people, but is it more of a pain in the ass than having your accounts frozen or having your money stolen by a corrupt counterparty? Is it more of a pain in the ass than needing to verify your identity and tell the government exactly what you're going to do with even very small amounts of money whenever you want to send it or spend it? In America, most people didn't think they would ever be the victims of this kind of exploitation and surveillance until now. And so, now is the perfect time to say, Bitcoin is not crypto. Of course, it uses advanced cryptography, but it has nothing to do with what crypto has come to mean colloquially. The Ponzi schemes, joke coins, and unregistered securities that virtually all cryptos are. Bitcoin is not a company token or a scheme to create fake value for underwriting bad debt. Bitcoin is absolutely scarce, peer-to-peer, censorship-resistant, digital currency designed to keep your wealth safe through any political and economic storm. Its price fluctuates in the short term, but over the long term, it's the best performing asset in human history. So the only question is, are you patient enough to secure your future?
My fear no pass poverty and die young. If I marry the wrong person, I go divorce. Heartbreak no dey pay me o. I no do again, no dey pay me. Nothing dey pay me pass when my mother ask me for money and I no get to give am. Nothing dey pay me pass that one. Sometimes seeing people walking out of my life is very painful. I wish they can run or they can disappear.
Where are we going to be in 10 to 15 years from now?
I think we're going to see a lot more use cases right now. So right now, people still view Bitcoin as an investment asset to a large extent. So people talk about price. People talk about 100K. People look at it as an asset type or investment asset. It's really the utility that I think we will see in the next decade or decade and a half. So I think it's a future of money. So it should be used as a utility. So I think when later on we shouldn't be calling Bitcoin. It's just money. So I think people like this is Bill Gates who said like people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but underestimate what they can do in 10 years. So I think within 10 years or so, 5-10 years, I think we're now seeing nation states accumulating Bitcoin and as strategic reserves, and that will increase the price further potentially, and that almost mathematically, and then we will see more use cases out of it. Yeah.
Okay, so you avoided the question. What's going to be the price of Bitcoin in 10 to 15 years?
To the moon.
I'm putting you on the spot. You got to give me a number. What would you say to your friend?
I think really there's no limit really. So it's very hard to put a precise number. So I'm avoiding the question still, but it's really hard to put a precise number on it. I think any number will get there in time.
Above 1 million?
I don't want to make any specific predictions.
Okay. What about the number of users? How many users do you think will be using Bitcoin in 10 to 15 years?
I think today we're around 5 to 10% adoption. So we're still before what we call crossing the chasm, which is usually around 20% or so. So I think in a few years we will reach more mainstream adoption, where we will reach 50, 70% of the population. We're probably never going to reach 100% of the population until like 20, 30 years later, because there's an older generation that may, like, my mom doesn't really know how to use cell phones very well. Right, so I think it will take a few generations to reach 100% adoption. Yeah.
Well, if we have 50% of people on the planet using and owning Bitcoin, I mean, that would make it the most widely held asset in the world.
I think it's probably approaching that already. If you look at any asset type, I think probably gold is still up there in terms of market value. So that means probably more people holding gold. But today, most gold are held by nation states. They're not held by individuals. So as an individual held asset, I think Bitcoin is probably already way up there. I think it's already there, yeah.
So I want to talk about nation states, but I want to talk about a theory I have. Bitcoin right now is digital gold, but it's better than gold in almost every attribute. I mean, it's more scarce, it's more portable.
Absolutely, yeah.
So when I think about what should the price of Bitcoin be, I really have a hard time making the case that it should be worth anything less than parity with gold, which would be, I think, a $16 trillion market cap.
I think it should be way more than that, because as you said, it has many advantages over gold. And gold is not a limited asset. Like, people control the supply of gold by not mining it, but there's a lot more. And we don't know how much they are. And with Bitcoin, we know exactly how sacred it is, and there's not a whole lot left. And it's easier to carry, it's easier to spend, it's easier to use. So there's so much more, and we should not estimate the potential of a new asset type or new industry by using old industries. You shouldn't estimate the market cap of Uber using taxis. They can do a lot more. I think with this new technology for money, we can do a lot more. Bitcoin can do a lot more that gold couldn't do. So gold is hard to transfer, hard to carry, hard to send internationally. It can't be used as a transaction currency where Bitcoin can. So I think cryptocurrencies we can do microtransactions, we can do large transactions. So there's a lot of things that crypto can do that gold cannot do. So Bitcoin should be way larger.
You heard it here, folks. Bitcoin should be way larger than gold. $16 trillion market cap. I think that's like $850,000 of Bitcoin. That's the floor. That's the floor. I think this is my last question I have for you, but are you familiar with the term hyper-Bitcoinization?
A little bit, yeah.
So hyper-Bitcoinization is basically the concept of universal adoption of Bitcoin, that every company in the world will own Bitcoin, every person in the world will own Bitcoin, and every nation state in the world will own Bitcoin. Do you subscribe to that view?
I think it's definitely going that direction. But a lot of things could happen in the future. There could be a better version of a Bitcoin. But right now, I don't see anything on the horizon. I think there's some designs in Bitcoin that nobody can replicate. I think one of the fundamental designs, the founders, nobody knows who he is. So that makes it more decentralized. And the community is like a really open community. So there's no one really in charge. So there's some fundamental concept that is really, really hard for somebody else to replicate right now. Bitcoin does have its limitations. I know you're a Bitcoin maxi, but paying for things does take 10 minutes. So is that going to become the payment protocol, or is that going to be a Lightning Network, or is it going to be a layer 2? There are different solutions around it, and how it's going to shape, or is it going to be a different blockchain? So there's different ways that the future could shape up. But I do think that for the foreseeable future, Bitcoin will continue to be the reserve currency globally, not just in crypto, just globally, right? Because it is the highest market cap, and that itself will have the network effect to continue to be the reserve currency. And then it's also the most decentralized. It's also the most secure in terms of hashing power, etc. So so I think that will go a very long way. I don't see it changing on the horizon yet, but no, anything could happen in the future. You know, Bitcoin, Internet 1.0. There was Internet 2, Internet. Well, now we call it ourselves Web 3. So but right now I don't see anything changing. So I'm a very, very strong supporter for Bitcoin. But although I also support other innovations in terms of blockchain development.
Well, I want to say, from when I first met you, you have a lot more gray hair.
Way more.
And thank you for everything you've done for Bitcoin. Thank you for the struggle and surviving and thriving. Here's to the next 10 years.
And David, I also want to say, especially to this audience here in this region, that many people may not know what you contributed to Bitcoin, and especially in the last, from the beginning. Also, your credit in sort of turning the U.S. leadership into interested in Bitcoin. So I think a lot of people don't know that. So I also want to thank you for all your contributions to crypto.
Thank you. Can we hear it for CZ?
All right, thank you so much. Yeah.